Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shri Zahir. I'm Dean of the Carlson School of Management. Welcome to the first Tuesday of the new academic year. We have students in the classroom and everything. The buzz on campus is amazing. It's always my favorite day of the year. And it's great to have First Tuesday happening right now. So thank you all again for joining us, both in person, and I know many of you are virtual as well on Zoom. And I hope you all had a great long weekend. And those of you who were here, I hope you managed to get to our great Minnesota get-together and managed to eat something on a stick. I did this weekend, and that was amazing. Anyway, so we're thrilled to welcome, of course, the hundreds of new students who are in the Twin Cities and in our buildings, and I just can't wait for the semester ahead to roll along. But before we get to our discussion with our speaker today, Christoph Beck, I would like to recognize First Tuesday's long-standing corporate and media sponsors, Wells Fargo and Twin Cities Business. And of course, a very special thank you to the many Carlson School of Management and University of Minnesota supporters in our audience. First and foremost, I'd love to welcome President Joan Gable. It's great to have you here, Joan. She has been an amazing leader through these years of the pandemic and everything else that has followed. So it's been phenomenal to have her in charge. Then we have, I think, Regent Doug Hipsch. Are you here, Regent Hipsch? Well, maybe not yet. And then John and Nancy Lindahl, who are been chairs of the Capital Campaign and been here for a long time, generously supported the school, the university for a long time. My good friend, Madeline Carlson Nelson, also a great support, and her friendship has meant so much to us. And I know there are leaders from the university, deans, heads of centers out here, so thank you all for being here and making this a very special First Tuesday. Okay, so now let me tell you a little bit more about Christoph, who's the chairman and CEO of Ecolab, the global leader in water, hygiene, and infection prevention that protects people and resources which are really vital to life. So he guides the company's 47,000 associates as they provide customers, and get this, 170 countries with the expertise and solutions they need to make the world cleaner, safer, and healthier. So since joining Ecolab in 2007, Christoph has held several senior leadership roles, including head of global institutional and international markets, Nalco Water, and more recently, chief operating officer. And of course, before joining Ecolab, Christoph has also led corporate sales in Europe for Nestle, and at one time was head of their Maggi business. So making him the closest thing we know to an expert in seasonings, noodles, instant soups, apart from water. But did you know this? Apart from all this, he's been a rocket scientist. It's just quite amazing. I mean, that all of this, plus being a rocket scientist, he worked on a space shuttle project for the European Space Agency early in his career. So originally born in Switzerland, Christoph holds dual Swiss and US citizenship, and he has a master's degree in engineering, as you can expect from a rocket scientist, from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. So today, he and his wife Nadine and their 2 children live near the Twin Cities, and they're very proud to call Minnesota home. And we'll ask him more about that in a bit. So thank you for joining us today, Christoph. Please come up to the stage. Okay, so we're going to start off with just a discussion between the two of us, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. And maybe I'll start with your personal journey, Christoph. I know both you and I, we have something in common. We were not born here, and yet we now call Minnesota home. So tell me a little bit about your journey. I mean, what was your personal journey here? How come you've, made Twin Cities now your home? What do you think about that?
You're right that we were both not born here. We're both trying to improve our Minnesotan English. I'm not making much progress on this one, unfortunately, but it's great to be here. It's a place I didn't know even existed so many years ago, and here I am. It's interesting, I was hearing, so a few years ago, it was at the graduation of my daughter, actually, and someone said, well, we get that advice that we should follow our heart, follow our dreams in life, and that's probably the worst advice that we can give, because we don't know what's out there, what's the best thing so for our own life as well. So I've had the typical expatriate life, in a way. I had the chance to move, some don't call it chance, obviously, to move 14 times in almost 10 countries, in 3 continents around the world. So I've been discovering a lot of places and ended up here in Minnesota. When I think about my own career journey as well, you talked about the rocket scientist, but my early dream as a kid was to be a car mechanic. So that was a little bit of a different form of rocket scientist, and my mom didn't find it really funny, said you didn't need to study something, and then I wanted to become a medical doctor, and ended up as a rocket scientist, worked for Nestle for 16 years, now for Ecolab. So nothing happened as planned as well, so both where I ended up in life and how my career developed as well at the same time. I took every step as an opportunity, and I think, for me at least, was a better way to look at life, ending up here in Minnesota, which has become my home in the meantime as well.
Right. I mean, I love that. I mean, this clearly you're almost like an accidental CEO of Ecolab,
Totally.
And I call myself sometimes an accidental dean, so I think this, it resonates with me. But anyhow, I mean, you took over as the chairman and CEO of Ecolab on, get this, January 6th, 2021. I think some interesting things were happening in our country at that time, on January 6th. But in addition to that, I mean, apart from everything that was going on in the US Capitol, and then you've had 2 years of a global pandemic, supply chain disruptions. So just you joined and took over as CEO at an incredibly challenging time. So what made you excited about being CEO? I mean, what was it about the job that attracted you? Or?
You know, it feels a little bit like the story of my life. It's true that when I turn on the TV on January 6th and you're watching the news, I say, oh, that's going to be a great day for my new job when you see those people climbing Capitol Hill in the US. You know, at the same time, when I think back, that's been true earlier in my own life as well. When I joined the company, in 2007, I spent a few months learning about the company, and Doug, my predecessor, gave me the opportunity to lead the biggest business in the company in hotels and restaurants in 2008. We all remembered what happened in 2008 as well. It was 80% of the company. The world was coming to an end, and here I was. That was my job. So then I moved to Europe as well, where the Euro crisis as well started, the Brexit, where there were big discussions about Greece and Italy staying in Europe, and that was a big business for us as well. And I became COO just when COVID started as well. So becoming CEO on January 6th was kind of a normal pattern as well for me, saying, well, here it goes again. That's probably normal. And every time, and that's probably been helpful as well, so for me, every time of hardship like that, I took that as an opportunity to learn and to make a difference and to support the team where leadership matters the most, ultimately. So it was an opportunity for me to build on great foundations that have been built over 98 years in our company and help lead the team towards better place, stronger place as well in difficult times. So. I'm not sure what my next step is going to be. If something dramatic is going to happen to the world, that's probably when I'm going to get promoted next.
Well, let's hope not. Or if something dramatic happens, let's hope it's something good, right? So anyway, I know, I think a lot of people here, we know about Ecolab, we see your products, in restaurants, in hospitals, everywhere we go, the sanitation products, the cleaning products. But how would you describe what Ecolab does to all of us?
This is this interesting question that we have in our company. I came from a food company. It was very easy to say, well, we sell chocolate, pizza, ice cream. Everybody understood. In our company, it's a little bit more complicated. COVID helped us because suddenly we saw Ecolab everywhere, which is good and tricky because when I meet people who do not know the company, people tell me, well, I've seen you in the bathroom. I said, well, that's really inspiring. When it represents maybe 1% of what we do as a company, the best way to express what we do as a company is to think about our purpose, which is to protect people from infections, and it's to protect the resources vital to life, like water. Okay. So we are this magic force behind each of you around the world, making sure you do not get sick and that natural resources are preserved anywhere 24/7. And when you think a hotel, a restaurant, a retail store, well, we help them stay clean and safe, that you don't get sick. When you get there, you have a good experience, and what you eat ultimately is going to be good. Can be in hospitals as well, where we protect hospital patients from getting an infection, disinfecting rooms, making sure that doctors wash their hands before they touch you. By the way, 40% of US doctors wash their hands before touching patients, so we still have work to do and a lot of opportunities as well out there. And it's also in operating room, making sure you're in a safe environment, that it's sterilized, that the instruments are right. We help produce pharmaceutical products as well, and making sure that the COVID vaccines or drug that are saving lives are as pure as they can be. We help doing that. And last but not least is really making sure that the 3 million customers we serve around the world can deliver better outcomes, whatever those are, being in a hospital, in a restaurant, in a car manufacturing, while using less water, and ultimately getting to net zero, as it's being called, that you operate, you grow, while using no water. And that's part of what we do as well, and the magic of the 47,000 people we have around the world serving those 3 million customers and bringing technology, expertise, chemistry, and helping them do exactly that. Better outcomes at a lower cost because you use less natural resources, which is the magic of what we do.
That's wonderful. I mean, I know you've been a global leader in sustainability, and you've done so much with the university as well, and supporting all of our sustainability efforts, whether it's the Institute on the Environment. We heard from Jessica Hellman a little while ago, and also just, the Carlson School itself. We're supporting about 16 Ecolab sustainability scholars, and they're just amazing young people. And I know at the university it's a lot more, it's in the hundreds. And so you've been a leader in sustainability, and so how has that played out? I mean, how do in what ways are you helping your clients, for instance, with their sustainability issues?
Yeah, before I get there, so
Right.
I'd like to thank you for the partnership we have. So between the university, especially the school, Marlene Carlson has been an inspiration for me all my life, since we got to know each other almost 20 years ago now, and it's driven me as well to our purpose, which includes sustainability. When you think about it, what does Ecolab mean?
Right.
And most people get it wrong because it's economics laboratory. It was in 1923 that the company was started with the promise that you can have cleaner hotels at a lower total cost because you use less natural resources. You fast forward and it became sustainable development, sustainability, ESG, all those words. But at the core of what we do for 99 years has been helping customers get better outcomes while using less natural resources, which is what we do every single day, which is what sustainability is all about. And when I talk to business leaders around the world, or government officials as well, talking about this green premium, for instance, that sustainability comes at a cost. Our belief is that this is wrong. Sustainability is a benefit, it's a dividend. If you operate better, if you use less natural resources, especially now, when you look at the prices for energy today, well, it's a good deal, ultimately, so to do that. So it's the way we grow. Our company grows fast by growing our impact, and our impact is huge, as mentioned earlier as well today. We have made the commitment in 2015 that we will help save enough water for the drinking needs of 1 billion people by 2030. And last year, we've crossed the 740 million people line as well, so way ahead of our plans in ways that are helping customers operate at lower costs. It's a good deal. They operate better. If they have a high return, they buy more from us. If they buy more from us, we can fund our future as well, which is a good thing for shareholders as well, which is why this win-win-win for us is so core in what we do.
Absolutely. I love this, this idea that sustainability is not, there's no trade-off between sustainability and profitability. And I think that's a very important point to make out there for people to understand. So thank you for that. Let's maybe move on to another issue which I think all of us are struggling with, and I know we talked a little bit about it at our table as well, and which is about the conversations around diversity and equity and inclusion, and how have those conversations changed within Ecolab over the last few years, and what are you doing in terms of furthering racial and gender diversity in your own organization?
It's a great question, and we had a passionate discussion a little bit earlier today where in our organization 15 years ago, I would say it was a nice to have, and now it's become an essential for success. And that's a big change. The company was successful 15 years ago. We were doing a lot of things right. I remember when I joined the executive team back then, I was the only non-American at the table. So talking about our non-Minnesotan accent, it was pretty clear being at the table there. And I was saying, my God, this is starting step one of the DE&I journey, which was called differently back then. But it really started with my predecessor saying, we need to understand better how we can attract more diverse people to our organization. We are a growth company. We will need more talent, and we can't just be looking for talent in one pool. And we need to broaden it, and we need to make sure that people coming within the organization, like you, like me, ultimately feel good, feel they belong, feel it's their future is here as well. And it's turned into a true essential drivers for our success as an organization over the years. We've spent a few years at the beginning of our journey to really face the truth and having those discussions with our teams around the world. How is it to work at Ecolab? How is it to grow as a talent, as a diverse talent in our own organization? And we had heard very extreme stories which were touching us. We are a people company. At the core of who we are, it's people. So hearing some of our teams talking about how it is to live in our company and how they look at the future triggered that change, and that was 13, 14 years ago. When I look today, this is part of who we are. We have a third of our management ranks are women and people of colors as well. It's been a great evolution, but as we were discussing before with Joan, so 54% of students here at the school, are women.
Right.
So with our third, it's a step in the right direction, and we need to move faster. And it's not for social reasons. It's because ultimately it's better for business, we're more successful, and it's way more fun to be in a company that's more diverse as well.
Right.
So it's been a hell of a journey for us.
That's great. That's great. I mean, one of the big issues there is also, how do you create and sustain a culture that is welcoming, the culture of Ecolab in the workplace? Are there specific things that you've undertaken to make sure that the culture remains strong?
It's living it every day. And when I think about D&I as well, I thought, and I was maybe a dreamer back then, that it would come very naturally because it's the right thing to do, and everyone would embark and accelerate on that journey. I have to admit that I was not totally right. I had some interesting discussions with our team that we should have those targets for leaders in terms of D&I. And I thought this is not the right approach because it should be driven by your heart, by your business mind as well. And a few years ago, we set targets for every leader around the organization and said, this is your objective by 2030, and this is your objective for this year, for 22 or 21. We started in 2020 doing that. And I have to admit, I was wrong. We've made more progress last year than in the past 3 years combined by doing that as well. It was exactly the right thing to do. But it's also facing the truth. And when our culture, our values are not respected, if a leader in the organization is not leading his or her organizations in the right way, well, it's to talk about it. It's to talk openly about it. And hopefully that leader improves in the meantime. And if he or she doesn't, ultimately we need to take action as well. And we've done that as well, so over the years. It's to take stances as well when we talk about abortion rights, for instance. We've been very open, very clear, as well as an organization, that we will support women in whatever way we can in the organization, because it's their choice, obviously. And we've done it the same day that it was announced, and that was important for us, which, by the way, we haven't changed anything. That was continuing doing what we've always done, which was important. And the last thing I'll mention is we were talking about how white men would as well so react. And it was having those days of understanding, as we call them in the organization, where teams around the world get together and speak very openly about their hopes, their concerns, about how we run the company, how we live as a team, and really engaging on that dialogue. And it's part of a journey. That's not been always an obvious one, but that's how we grow, that's how we strengthen our culture every single day, one step at a time.
That's great. I mean, that sounds like a wonderful, really great idea. I know another thing that I think is on lots of leaders' mind is, how have we re-engaged after the pandemic? And I know you've officially invited employees back to the St. Paul headquarters starting in April. And so how's that going for you?
Well, we've tried it 5 times, and COVID kept catching up and saying, well, not this time.
Not this time.
We'll see you in 3 months. Well, not this time. We'll see you in 3 months. So that's been a little bit of a complicated journey, so to say the least. But the way we've looked at it was really to say, it's an opportunity to change. To lead differently, to be a different workplace as well, so for anyone around the organization. And I was always amazed looking at others on the extreme side of the spectrum and saying, well, it's just an aberration, everybody will have to come back on that day, and if you're not coming back, you're not part of the organization. I was with a friend from a high-tech company, and we said, well, we might have a placard, and just to say, okay, if you don't like that approach, just join us, because we're gonna look at that in a very different way. So it's no dogma, it's not hoping that 2019 is gonna come back, because it will never come back. It's the page has been turned, and it's taking a new opportunity to be organized differently and without having a clear end state in mind. But the few things that we've defined were the guiding principles. We said whatever organizational model that we will use, it will have to drive the performance of the company.
Okay.
The second is we need to remain a great place to work for any talent who want to join us on our mission as well. And third, it needs to drive engagement. Really making sure that people are fulfilled, can drive their future, can contribute as well as a team, not just as an individual as well, which was a big thing. And the last thing I'd say, which was a mistake I made earlier in the pandemic, was to talk about the return to office. 85% of our teams has never left their working space, because we have half the company serving customers. We have a quarter of the companies are in plants, in labs, in logistics. And I sent a survey once asking about what the organization was thinking about the return to office. And I got some very interesting messages back and saying, well, we've never left. So we're not sure what you're talking about. And that was a big learning for us to say, we don't want to have 2 classes in the organization, the ones in the office that have a different life than the other ones who are not in the offices, which, by the way, are the ones creating the value for the company as well with the customers, to say, well, those principles need to apply for everyone in the organization, and we called it the future of work instead of the return to office, which I've learned it the hard way was the wrong way to look at it.
Well, it's great to, we're always learning, in these kind of roles. So that's wonderful. I mean, I think it leads very well into what I wanted to ask you about as well, which is sort of the leadership lessons. I mean, what lessons have you learned in the last 2 years and that have helped you, and that are helping you grow your business as well?
I'm still learning. It's the so-called learning the hard way, to say the least. And it's keeping in mind that, as mentioned before, those are the new times. Anyone hoping that 2019 is going to be back, we're going to revert to normal, it won't. And thinking about how is demand going to evolve in the future, well, it's going to be lower than what it was last year. Inflation, how is it going to be versus 2 years ago? Well, it's going to be way higher, and it's going to stay as well. Geopolitical challenges are going to stay as well, so it's not going to change in 23. The famous ambition to say that this year has been really hard, but next year is going to be much easier. Well, I'm still waiting for that easier after 30 years in leadership positions. So it's kind of getting used to the new normal and embracing it, because I think that there's not been a better time to be a leader than right now. It's really hard, there is no doubt, but it's where we can make a big difference. When things are easy, whenever those times are, well, leaders are just complicating lives. It's kind of let people do their job and support them. In difficult times, we need to provide confidence. We need to think about, someone was saying the other day, knowing what to do when you don't know what to do, which is something we're practicing so on a daily basis right now, because things are happening that we've never experienced. When Nord Stream 1 got shut off this weekend from Russia to Western Europe, well, who has experienced that in the past? No one. There's no playbook for that as well. So it's kind of having that confidence, inspiring the team that we're going to make it, we're going to be stronger as well, so going forward. And ultimately, it's to be there for the team. Right. It's not about us, it's not about leaders, it's about what's right for the team, and how do we make sure that the team is doing really, really well in times that can feel a bit harder, but times that for us, we had a discussion a little bit earlier today, when we think about what we do as an organization, so preventing infection, preserving natural resources, well, it's pretty well aligned with what the world needs as well going forward. So I feel totally fine that we will keep growing fast. We've never grown as fast as we do now as an organization, so we'll be fine, and we'll be okay in the meantime too.
Well, you've certainly, Ecolab has survived for almost 100 years. I know universities are long-lived organizations, and at the University of Minnesota, obviously over 150 years old. We're, at the Carlson School, we turned 100 years old in 2019. And so we're a little bit older than you are. So, but still, for a private company to survive for 100 years, Ecolab must be doing something right. And so what has been your secret to remaining resilient, agile, innovative? Clearly, all of those things probably helped you last out this 100 years.
It's the perfect time for us to think about that. As you mentioned, so we will be 100 next year. We don't see ourselves as old.
Okay.
It's more foundations for the next 100 years, the way we look at it. And my predecessor had this approach, which really touched me quite a bit, of differentiating what he called the currents from the waves. And that's been a great guide for us as an organization. The current are those macro trends of water scarcity, of climate change, of pandemics, of technology evolution that are here to stay. Unfortunately, climate change is here to stay, as much as some would wish it would go away. Well, it's going to be true for the 100 years to come as well. And since this is what we do, it's really making sure we keep our eyes focused on the long term, on what's going to keep the company growing, because we serve basic needs for the world. From the waves that can be what's happening in Europe, for instance. As dramatic as it is, this will pass. It will be hard in the meantime, but it's not confusing that short term and addressing the challenges that we will all face in Europe, to take that example, and to confuse that with the long-term ambition that we have as an organization. So really kind of differentiating the currents from the waves has been important. And the second thing I'd say, it's to keep improving the business, the team, every single day. Every single business, every place around the world. I had a chance to be in India a few weeks ago, where when we talk about growth, high population, water scarcity, well, it's the place where it's kind of the hot place for what we can do. 10 years ago, we were losing money in that country. We could not grow in a way that was good for the company long term. Today is one of our most successful countries we have around the world. So it's improving the business, it's improving the team, it's getting more D&I ingrained in our own organization, and it's making bets as well, so for the future. During my first year as a CEO, well, we made the second largest acquisition in our history when we acquired Purelight, which is one of the two leaders in purification for drugs and vaccines. Well, that was a bet we made in our own future. So that's the way we think about it.
And a well-timed bet, so.
We hope so.
Great.
Looks good so far. So that's the way we build for the next 100 years.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, I think, I've asked you a lot of questions. At this point, I'd love to open it up to the audience. Those of you who are here, please raise your hand, and somebody will come and reach you with a mic. And those of you who are online, you can either raise your hand on the webinar, or you can post your question on chat, and we'll alternate between questions that you post from the audience here as well as the audience online. So with that, Amy, take it away.
Yes, we're going to get started over here with Mark.
Thank you. My name is Mark Hughes. Thanks for your presentation today. Many years ago, when you moved into the building you are now with Travelers, I was picked by Mayor Coleman to oversee that move as I was chairman of one of the city committees, and it was an honor for me because it gave me a chance to use the education that I had learned here and also administrate from a city standpoint. But I wanted to ask you, in the last few years, Ecolab has taken on many acquisitions, but I also know that it's a worldwide company, but I also want to stress the point of how important Ecolab is to the Twin Cities where it stands right now as your headquarters are here, and thanks for what you've done for the university.
Did you have a specific question, or you want the...
We want to learn about the many acquisitions they've taken on over the last, 3-4 years.
Christophe, do you have anything specific to say about your acquisitions in the last
Yeah,
couple
absolutely. No, I like the 2 points, so the acquisitions and our role in the Twin Cities. 2 different questions, obviously, but important so for us. Acquisitions have always been a big driver of our growth for the company. The last 10 years, 12 years, we've done over 100 acquisitions. In ways that are adding capabilities, that are helping us to get in new geographies and opening new businesses as well, like life science, pharma, as mentioned before, what we did as well last year. This is the secondary driver. It's not our main driver. Main driver is really organic growth, which is going really well, like it is today, by the way. But we know that we need external innovation as well, so to feed the growth machine for the future. And we've been really good at it, so because we've practiced it for so many years as well, so in our history. And back to the question on the role in the Twin Cities, I see ourselves as totally part of society in here. We are in downtown St. Paul. I meet with the mayor and his team on a very regular basis with other CEOs as well in the community, because we've decided that we can't just sit on a bench and make comments about what the city and the state should be doing. No, we need to be part of that process as well. It takes time, bears risks, obviously, but not doing it is even worse. So I like the progress that we're making. I like the relationship we have with the city, with the state, and this is what we're doing everywhere around the world as well, where we want to be seen as a local company wherever we operate as well around the world.
That's terrific, and I know you have a great partnership with the University of Minnesota as well. I mean, it's thousands and thousands of our students working there, and thank you for all of the support over the years, as I mentioned, for everything that we do at the university. I think we know of at least 288 Carlson School students who work in Ecolab, plus, of course, all of your senior leadership that helps us on our advisory boards and things like that. So it's been a
Absolutely.
tremendous
We love it.
partnership with, at least definitely with the university. So Amy, do we have a
Yep.
question from the online audience, or?
I think they're a little slower today, Cherie, so we're going to stay here in-house for a
Okay.
minute.
Okay, I was curious with your rocket science background. We didn't talk too much about innovation and technology, but there's some clear trends with IoT and AI, some really exciting things going on in that area. And I was wondering if you could expand on that, your perspective on where that could take Ecolab in the future. Thanks.
I love it. Thanks for the question. You know, the digital journey has been started very early on in our organization. And interestingly enough, started in one of our major acquisitions, which was Nalco Water, that we acquired in 2011. They developed this concept of connected chemistry, which came out of R&D, by the way, because it were our scientists that were trying to understand how can you reuse and recycle water on a continuous basis, and shifting from doing lab testing to online measurement to make it easy. Obviously, they're probably going to get scared if I express it that simplistic, what they've invented as well in '92. That was before the web even existed back then, and then turned into a major innovation. So for us, for our organization, today we have 40,000 water systems around the world that are remote monitored from our center in Pune in India, by the way, with 150 engineers that are tracking the performance of water systems in 40,000 locations from one place in India, which interestingly enough, so that has helped us not only reuse and recycle water in ways that are driving towards net zero, which is what many are trying to accomplish as well. But at the same time, since we are measuring in a real time what's happening in all those processes around the world, we know what good looks like. And we know in one plant or in one hotel or whatever that location is, what's the best performance you can reach. And we know how to get there as well. And we can help that company understand, well, how do you share that best practice around your organization? How can you spread it within an industry? How can you learn from the oil and gas industry to the car manufacturing as well? We have all that knowledge that's built in now in our own cloud, which is adding new value that we can provide for our customers as well going forward. And the last part is, how do we improve, or how do we leverage digital technology in order to improve the lives of our team? Half of our team is serving customers every single day. And we know that half their time is not adding value for customers because they're driving to customers, they're preparing the visit for the customers, they're doing the debrief, all the things that we all have to do. We have engineers that are spending half their time doing non-value added activities. Well, digital technology can automate that, and you can provide more value for our customers as well at the same time. It's a good deal for them, it's a good deal for the customers, it's a good deal for the company, and ultimately that's one of the reasons why we're investing even more in digital technology, to create more value for our customers by sharing best practices, but as well at the same time improving the life of our people serving customers.
Great, thank you. We do have an online question, so we're going to go to our folks here on Zoom.
One of our live stream participants is wondering what keeps you up at night.
What keeps me up at night? A lot of things. It's an interesting world, so for sure, for all of us. For me, it's the health of our teams, because everyone's being stretched. Everyone is facing unpredictable situations as well, wherever they operate around the world. And interestingly enough, as mentioned before, this is not happening just once, short time, and then afterwards we revert back to where we used to be. It's going to be for years to come as well. And making sure that as a team, we can remain resilient, we can keep thriving as well going forward, and that we can do it in a way that is good for our health, for our team's health, is really what's most important, ultimately for me, because if our team is not doing great, well, all innovation, all digital technology, all M&A, all everything else ultimately so won't be worth much. So it's really making sure that our team is in a great place and keeps being in a great place as well going forward, which is not an easy task right now.
Great, we have a question here, and then KK, I see you too.
Hi, Christoph. Good to see you again. So I have a question which actually drove me here today, which is, so over this past summer, we have seen extreme weather, droughts, flooding all over parts of Europe, Asia, and other parts of the world. I'm curious how you're responding to that, how you're, as the organization, and for you personally, like, of course, those are signatures of this great currents of climate change that we're experiencing. How is Ecolab, responding or dealing with that? And how has that changed, especially over this past 3 months?
Great question. The big difference between water and carbon is global and water is local, for all the reasons that we know. And when we think about climate change, we're not on the right path, let's face it. We're all aiming and committed to 1.5 degrees, and we're on the path of 2.7 degrees. So it's almost double where we should be, with all implications that you're mentioning as well. When we look at the number of companies that have made commitments, well, 2/3 of those companies are off track versus their own commitments as well. So climate is not exactly going the right direction, so to say the least. What does it mean on water? One of our customers one day said, well, if climate change were a shark, its teeth would be water. Because that's what we experience first and foremost, through droughts, floodings, as you're mentioning as well. And interestingly enough, there's a direct correlation between carbon and water. Between 10 and 20%, depending on where you are around the world, of carbon is coming from energy that's being used to manage water, to heat water, to cool water, to treat water, to pump water, you name it, ultimately. So when you save water, you save carbon as well at the same time. And the two things that we're doing, on one hand, is making sure that all those customer locations around the world can operate with as little net water usage as they can. As mentioned, so I was in India a few weeks ago, where I was talking to a steel company as well and saying, well, we'd like to double our steel capacity, but we don't have more water. We have less water. How can we do that? And that's part of our solution. And then is the question, since water is local, how do we bring it more globally as well? And we've created a few years ago with the United Nations, the so-called Water Resilience Coalition, bringing the top 150 companies around the world that represent 1/3 of the world water usage. When you think about it, 150 companies touching 1/3 of the world water usage, you can make a difference when you get all of them as well so together. And then it's working basin by basin, can be like the Mississippi River, obviously, and working together and making sure that we manage water in a way that's net positive for nature. And with the benefits that we get as well from those savings, how can we build the right infrastructure to provide water to people who do not have access to it as well. So it makes it more complicated than on carbon, because you need to act locally and drive it, leveraging it on a global basis as well. And while you do it, you reduce carbon, and hopefully over time, and it's going to take time, we're going to have temperatures going in a better way and hopefully having less of those dramatic situations generated by water.
Thank you. KK?
Christoph, this is very insightful. Thank you, very inspiring. I sit here on 3 tables of supply chain operations people, and that's one area that we are immensely grateful for the partnership we have had over the years with Ecolab. As you think of the relationship you have with the University of Minnesota, the Carlson School, and I would even venture to say being myopic in the supply chain operations department, what guidance do you have for us as faculty? You have shared a lot of things. As you look ahead, you're looking at the plus 100 years, what guidance do you have so that we can better prepare our students for the future that lies ahead of them?
It's a great question, thank you. Well, first is realizing that innovation doesn't come just from within, our company or the university, or even within a department within the university, or within a business within our company as well. It's by working together across boundaries that we're going to find the right innovations. And one thing that we've learned as a company is the best innovations come through customers. And when we can work with a customer together, that's ultimately where we find the best innovation that we can replicate as well around the world. I mentioned just before that example of that steel manufacturer in India. So for instance, well, if we can help them get to their objective, well, we can do that for many others as well at the same time. We don't have all the solutions. You don't have all the solutions at the university, but we know that probably together we might find the right solution as well, including some outside as well startups. We invest a lot in tech stores, in other ventures as well around the world to get some new ideas. So I like what you're doing as well, so kind of bringing companies on campus as well, being part of your own organization, that we can share ideas, develop ideas, try new things, fail quickly, but ultimately so deliver values so for our own customers. So the more we can bring together customers, companies, and universities together, the faster we're going to get to the right solutions, because we will be solving issues that are truly existing. We were talking with Dean Toller as well, so from the medical school as well here during COVID. We've launched during the pandemic this Ecolab Science Certified program, which is certifying hotels and restaurants around the world to be as safe as it can be from an infection perspective as well. We said, well, how can we leverage the strength of the university to develop the right programs, adding new solutions, and endorsing what we're doing as well, and going together to market as well as a university and as a company, working hand in hand so for the good of customers and the world around us. So it's strengthening those partnerships, getting even closer, and living together to find the right solutions for customers.
All right, we have one more question, and we've got it from our online attendees.
Yeah, this person is wondering what you're hearing from the leaders of the hotel and restaurant industries, your customers, as they're coming out of the pandemic, which was a challenging time for those businesses. Are they feeling optimistic or pessimistic about the near future?
Well, I'm an optimist by nature. So hotels and restaurants are going to do great going forward. Just need to go to the airports doing last weekend. Well, there was no risk of being lonely, to say the least. It was packed everywhere. People wanted to get out, wanted to experience vacation. I sure wanted, no doubt about that. We're not going to start cooking either at home, so it can be obviously for fun, as a hobby. I love doing that as well. But on a daily basis, well, is it really the new trend that we're not going to travel, that we're going to cook at home? No, we're going to keep traveling. We're going to keep discovering the world. We're going to keep going out as well, so to enjoy great meals between friends. But the industry will change. There is no doubt as well. When we think about labor, for instance, I don't think it will ever come back. Well, that means that we need to find new solutions to get better outcomes with less labor in order so to help that industry do even better. Sustainability, as we've discussed today, will become a bigger topic. Talk about energy in Europe. That's going to be a big deal for hotels and restaurants as well, so we can help them get as well so to the right place. So it's going to change quite dramatically when you think about drive-through, online ordering. That's going to be here to stay, and that's a good thing as well. So I think that that's an industry that is opening a new chapter right now, and that ultimately will transform itself for the better. It's going to be hard for some in the meantime, probably for the ones not being able to cope with the change quickly enough. The ones who are going to make it, I think it's going to be great. So thinking about this industry, we've been serving the hotel and restaurant industry for 99 years now, very successfully. Well, that's going to be true for the next 100 years as well, but it's going to be different than the way we've been operating in the last 99.
Well, Christoph, thank you so much for your comments, and good luck on the next 100 years. I'm sure I can I can't wait to see what Ecolab will be doing in the next 100 years. But And, you know, it's just great to have these kinds of informative conversations. As I think I was talking to Mark earlier today, and he said every time we come, we learn something from the leaders that we bring in, and we've certainly learned a lot from you. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And thank you also to everyone who's joined us both in person and virtually today. And we have some exciting news for our next First Tuesday. We have Michelle Miller-Burns, who's the president and CEO of the Minnesota Orchestra, who will be speaking at the next First Tuesday, and I hope many of you can come back to listen to her. It will be an interesting speaker from a nonprofit organization, a very different kind of organization, but also one that has been through many challenges and has come out with flying colors. So it's great to see these kinds of leaders come to First Tuesday, and again, thank you so much for everything that you've done for us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.